Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast, where we discuss everything female athlete performance training. I got my regular guest back on, Shay Haddo, who is a confidence coach to female athletes. And we are going to just jump right into today's topic. And I have a question for Shay, and this is something that has been coming up a lot with a lot of colleagues I've been having these conversations with who work with young girls, whether it's in the mental training space, performance training, or even nutrition. And what I found is a lot of parents are signing their daughters up for programs right away, and the parent is all in and wants to do it, and they're super psyched about it, but the daughter is very lukewarm and hesitant even. So Shay, have you experienced this with some people approaching you for confidence programs, and how have you navigated this issue?
Yeah, I've seen it a lot, and as you were talking, I can see both sides of the coin. So I remember when I texted you and the other group that we're with about one of the big problems we're experiencing, and for me, one of them a lot more recently is that parents will come to me and ask, like, want to work with me and see the value in my work, but I can tell that their daughter is like, I don't really like think that I need this, or do I think that I want to do this? And I used to, let's say a year ago, I was in this space where I'd be like, she definitely needs it. Like,
Mhm.
bring her on, even if she doesn't know it, like she needs it. And I have seen some success with that. Like one of my, I don't know what to call her, top student or whatever, she didn't really want to do my program and ended up like doing it and then changing her mindset real quick and had amazing results. But most of the time, like I've seen, if the girl doesn't really want to be there, they're not going to see results. Like it doesn't matter how good I am or my program is or how much I care. If she doesn't really want to be there and work on her mindset or her strength and conditioning in your world, like she's not really going to see the results. Like too often, I think camps, extra training, other activities like what we do comes mainly from the parent, and it can lead to like burnout. It can lead to not seeing as good of results as we would like. So not only is it not great for them if their daughter doesn't really want to be bought in, but also it's not good for us because then we don't get the results for our clients, which is something that I know both you and I like, we really value that obviously. So yeah, it's been a big problem, and it extends just beyond our work. It extends to, like I said, just the sport in general, and extra camps and private trainings and stuff like that, which I think has become a big problem.
It's so interesting you say that you used to just tell everyone, "You know what? Come on board, like, this will be
Yeah,
great," but now you've changed how you get people into your program, because at the end of the day, you really want this to be transformative. You want it to be worth their time, and you want them to get the change they want in their confidence, but if they're just half in, maybe not attending your amazing Zoom calls and putting in the work, then
mhm,
the program isn't as meaningful. And you have such an amazing program, but with online coaching or online mentoring, it absolutely goes both ways. We don't live in these families' households. We can't hold people's hands, and that's also not the goal either. We don't want people to be coddled by us, to have their hand held by us. This is really about autonomy, learning self-discipline as well, and that's what I know you want out of the girls in your program, and me as well, especially from the training standpoint. But it is also interesting that there are rare cases where I have also seen a few girls not excited about the program, but I just say, "You know what? Let's just give it a shot, and
yep.
maybe they'll come around." And I have seen some great situations where girls have completely transformed, and it wasn't even really me. It was just they just enjoyed doing it and found purpose in it. And those
Right.
are the really cool stories, but that's not the case for everyone. I've maybe seen like 3 girls not excited, but then they turn it
Most,
around
yeah.
once they were in the program.
Right. Yeah, I think like yeah, those stories I think are kind of the exception. Like for the most part, it is like if they're not fully bought in and don't have their purpose behind it, then they're not going to put in the work. And like from our perspective as a coach, it's not fun for us. At least it's not fun for me to work with someone that doesn't want to be there. And then it dilutes the integrity of the whole group. So if it's group coaching, which is what I do, it dilutes the whole integrity of the group because it's the energy that is brought to the group. So it's a waste of time and money on everybody's end. So it's like, I'm not necessarily saying like don't encourage it at all as a parent. It can have, you can have some encouragement and like plant the seeds, right? Because a lot of girls like may not really have the self-awareness like, oh, this is really important. So like planting the seeds, I think is valuable to kind of bring it to light. But then really like the decision of, hey, do I want this or not? I think parents, in my opinion, should totally be hands off and be like, hey, I think this would be really good for you, but it's 1,000,000% your decision. Like, I think that's where the girls can start to build autonomy, like you mentioned, which I know both of us are huge advocates of autonomy and like being self-sufficient. But I think that's when girls really see the most results, when it's fully coming from them, where they don't feel this external pressure that, oh, I have to do this because mom and dad want me to do this.
It's just amazing. Like with online coaching, there's so much you can accomplish. And I've just seen just such transformations happen. And the beauty of having an online coach or mentor, it's like you can do it in the comfort of your own home. So we got convenience on our side, we got time on our side, and honestly it's the ideal situation. And like we should be grateful that we can do that and impact people in this way. And athletes can go through confidence and performance programs remotely, especially if they're crunched for time with busy sports schedules, practices, and whatnot. But I actually recently hired my own online coach because I
Yeah.
want to see what it's like on the client side. But I also do want to improve my speed for soccer coming up. So I hired
Yeah.
someone who I see as a mentor in the industry and who's an absolute legend in this space. And I did it for my own performance, but by also continuing education. And what I found was, yes, it's hard to wake up and be like, oh, shoot, I got to do my online workout. So I get it from that perspective. But having that purpose and coming back to why am I doing this online program is so key to revisit, because in
Yeah.
those moments when you're home and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, you come back to that. And that's when you stay consistent. That's when you have a success. And another thing I realized was the coach who's writing the program for me is putting so much time into this. And there's
Mhm.
a caring person on the other end. And that makes me feel like, okay, I want to respect them and show up for
Absolutely.
them. And that's another piece of it. And
Totally.
that's where it does go both ways. And it's just having a servant's heart, serving your coach and then your coach serving you. And it's just this like
Mhm.
great relationship. And honestly, online training is not for everyone, and that's okay. But I think it's critical for everyone to realize that the coach needs the respect and consistency because they care. They want to help you make a change. And that's kind of what I learned in this situation. It was super interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I work with an online coach too for strength and conditioning stuff, and I worked with him for years, and I can't remember the last time I didn't have a coach necessarily, right? So I have someone too, and I'm thinking like, yeah, if I didn't have him as my coach, there would probably be days where I'm like, oh, I'm good, like I don't have the time to work out, but I know that he's putting so much time and energy into writing the programs and checking in and all facets. And so I want to show up for him. And like it's that two-way exchange, right? So if I show up for him, he's going to show up for me. And that's true of any, mentorship relationship. Is they're not holding our hands. We're not trying to hold their hand, but it's like, it's that also a big accountability piece, right? So just knowing that someone somewhere out there cares about you and is thinking about you and wants you to succeed, that's like, ooh, I'm going to like first show up for me, but also like I'm going to show up for them because they care about me. I think that's so powerful.
Mhm. And it's good that you have that interaction with him, because I know like some online coaches are like, we're just going to check in once a month, and there's hardly like any like FaceTime. And I think it is key for people to find someone, whether it's for performance training, nutrition, or mental skills, where
Yeah.
you can interact with them on a weekly basis. There's an open door policy. You can get on a call with them if you need, or you can message them on your group platform or whatever you're using. It's so important. But again, like, I think if my online coach was texting me every single day, I'd be like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah, too
But
much.
yeah, it's too much. And I don't want my hand to be held like that,
Right.
but for someone to reach out and care once a week, a few times a month, it's like, oh, okay, he's still there. He's programming. So I got to do my job.
Yeah. Right. And like, I'm thinking too about like long-term mentorship, because I think a lot of times people come into our spaces and they say, okay, like 3 months, like 3 months, we're going to be good. We're done. Like, yeah, you can see some improvement in 3 months, but I see the real value in long-term mentorship, because especially with teenage girls, there's highs and there's some lows. You know what I mean? Like there's always these different phases of your life where you're up and you're down, and you need that support. You don't need it, but it's great to have that support, right, of someone that can like pick you up when you're down and keep the momentum up when you're up. So I personally, as a mentee, I love having a mentor long term to help me in all these different phases of my life, because life changes so much. And so when I'm coaching, like I try to encourage like the long-term mentorship as well, because it's not just about get in, get out, see the result. No, it's about get in and then really learn from that mentor, be guided and supported by that mentor, because you're going to need it in a year and 2 years. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for people also to look at the big picture when it comes to mentors. Find someone that you could see yourself or your daughter working with for a couple years. Because for me, it's not this short term thing. Like if that is your thing, like personally, don't work with me. I want people who want to be in for the long haul.
Are you finding that a lot of people who sign up with you, they're doing it from a mindset of being proactive, or is it more like reactive, like daughter makes a mistake in a game or is in a rut and we need to hire someone for this? Or is it kind of a
Mhm.
mix of both?
I think more so it's reactive. Uh, I don't have very many people come to me that were like, hey, we're pretty good, but we just want to be on top of it. Usually it's like, my daughter is really struggling and like, we need your help. So usually it's the problem comes in and then, okay, let's look for a solution. I would say 90% of the time it's more reactive, at least in my world.
Mhm. Yeah, that seems to make more sense from the mental side of things,
Mhm.
because when an athlete's in a rut and they've just been playing bad over and over again or making mistakes, it's really hard for them to come out of it themselves. So
Right.
they do need to outsource in that situation. And I think with like the performance world, it tends to be more proactive, I'd say, just because of the
I agree.
injury thing.
Yep. And
Um,
like skills training, I think is more proactive as well.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. So, yeah, it's just like interesting to see. But I have seen some instances where a girl will appear slow in a game because she
Yeah.
maybe plays against people bigger than her, or it was just like a different style of play. And then they're like, oh my gosh, we need to hire a speed coach. And it's like, no, like, just
Right.
do what you've been doing. She's 9 years old. She doesn't need to
Yes.
hire me
Yes.
quite yet. Just,
Right.
play race in the backyard. But I don't want people to jump so quick, especially for the younger ones,
Right.
because it can just become this cycle of you trying to put a band-aid over every single mistake she makes and trying to solve it every single week. And we've talked about
Yeah.
mistakes. They happen all the time. And sometimes we just have to be like, you know what? That's sports. To play sports is to make mistakes. And I think in the more serious circumstances, that's when you need more of that mentorship for the mental side.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up as far as like the age thing, because too a lot of people like young, like 7, 8, will come to me and I'm like,
Mm,
it's a little bit too early. I've had girls that young, and I haven't seen. They just it's hard for them to really like grasp and be accountable to those concepts. So I think generally people It's hard because sometimes people jump in too early and then there's the other people that jump in too late to mental stuff. So it's like kind of this sweet spot, I guess. But I think in general, people worry too much too early. Like they're 8 years old, they're going to be going through whether for your like they're not even close to hitting puberty yet. You know what I mean? So there's so many times where people jump in too early. And that's a conversation that I had on my podcast with Linda Flanagan, where she was talking about how there was a lacrosse parent who her daughter was 5 and she was like, "Oh, is it too late for my daughter to start lacrosse?" Like 5, she said it happens all the time, which is absolutely insane. And also another big point to that is sometimes with and we're talking about both sides of the coin. So the positives of mentorships and the maybe like let's hold off on mentorship because I want to be totally transparent. But there's some times where let's say there's an 8-year-old and you're like, oh, she's not very confident, she's struggling with mistakes, she's too hard on herself. And then you insert an adult in to fix her quote unquote problem, that girl then thinks she has a problem. And so it almost perpetuates the problem even more. Whereas, like, if it's an older kid, like, yeah, it's a little bit different, but a younger kid, it's like they see that as there's a problem, there's something wrong with me. So anytime that I have a girl in my program, the first thing I lead with is, hey, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. This is just kind of a cherry on top thing, even though it for a lot of girls, it's very necessary. But I don't want them to see as there's a problem, because if they think there's a problem, the problem is just going to get perpetuated. So when parents come and want to work with you or with it's important that they do it from a place of abundance and not a place of, oh, there's something wrong with you, let's hurry and get help, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm glad we're getting into the age discussion because, man, that story about the 5-year-old lacrosse player, that's a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
But
I was
sadly,
like,
it sounds like it's a common
yeah,
scenario.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, my thing is like with like the young ones, they have to want to do it, but most of the times just do the basics. Make sure
Yeah.
they're exposed to multiple sports, multiple social environments to help their mental game, challenges in the neighborhood, unstructured play. I mean, that
Yes.
alone is going to help their mental and physical health. I mean, it's going to bolster it. So, check those things first. Check the nutrition aspect. I mean, nutrients play a big role in mental health and mood and confidence. I mean, there's just so many basics that young kids could be
Yes.
doing first before you sign your 8-year-old up for like a confidence or speed program. Just do the
Absolutely.
basics first. But, I have seen some situations where I've worked with 8 to 9-year-olds who just love doing it and just want to be with a female role model or whatever. But
Right.
those sessions are structured so differently and they're more about play and different games. But even then, I'm like, look, you don't need to do the 2 times a week required training like my older girls do. We're not testing your broad jump like my older girls do. You
Right,
don't need to
right.
train year round on my monthly subscription like my older girls
For
do.
sure.
So it's very different for that age group. And I think there's something to say about the emotional readiness and just making sure the girl wants to do it. But even then, it's like, maybe do the basics first before you need me.
Yeah, I mean, basics in my world would be like for an 8-year-old, like reading my book is
Mhm.
extremely basic. Like start there and then go out, climb some trees, play in the mud, like just go play. I know we may be going off topic a little bit here. I could talk about this forever, but I think
I got
generally,
time if you want. So,
I know you would agree,
yeah.
like kids are way too overscheduled. Like with both of my group calls this week, we talked about time and energy management. And every single one of the girls, when I said, how do you feel about your schedule? The answers were stressed, overwhelmed, and anxious. Every single one of them. Like we looked at their schedules, they don't really have much time. So my whole premise of the lesson was adjust your schedule to put fun things into your schedule. I'm not trying to get you to be more productive. I just want you to have more fun. Like I think kids need to play more and like go to practice and do less training. Like let them just be kids. So again, I could talk about that for probably for hours. So
The overscheduling is such an issue, and
Mhm.
it's hard to find an adolescent girl who has even a day off from something
Yeah,
that's
that was rare. Mhm.
yeah, something that's organized and in the calendar. And it's just so interesting to look back on your own sports career, and it's like I don't think I ever felt that overwhelmed or stressed, but that was back in the day when there wasn't that year-round model, and we
Mhm.
had soccer just in the spring,
Yep.
and then we could play basketball in the winter. There wasn't really like indoor soccer. I mean, maybe it was like super laid back, but every
Yep.
season was reserved for its own sport and own activity. And we practiced like twice a week for 90 minutes. And now you see girls practicing 3 to 4 nights a week for 2 hours.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't know, you can still develop and become a quality player with more efficient practice 2 times a week. So I find that
Yeah.
that's so interesting. I mean, we all ended up okay, but the
Yeah, I think
model has
so.
just become just so overscheduled, and it just I think we're in a really big hole right now. And I
Yeah.
listened to your podcast with Lindsay, and I was also thinking, well, man, am I just an extra obligation in the schedule? But to your point, when we were not recording earlier, it's like, no, they need the strength training to be able to handle this nonsense.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
they need the confidence and mental training to be prepared for all of
And to
this
handle the
load.
stress and yeah.
Yeah. So it's just yeah, it's just super fascinating how sport has just taken over year round. And there are several girls that I can name that haven't had even a 2 week break in 4 years.
Insane.
And this
I
it
mean,
just continues through the summer. ECNL's all summer, it's all winter, and then you got showcases. It's wild.
yeah, I mean, I haven't met anyone in a while that didn't have year-round sports, and if there's multiple sports in there, that's good. If it's like basketball in the summer, whatever, that's better than just the same sport. But yeah, I just think that they're just way too overscheduled. It doesn't leave any room for extra hobbies. And then when that happens, their identity gets completely wrapped up in just their sport. And then let's say that they get injured or they want to quit. Now, who are they without their sport? That was my story. That's so many story of girls that get injured. It's like, I don't know who I am. What do I do? And so there's so many different problems that can stem from this one thing of being overscheduled. But that's just one of them. Like burnout is a major issue. Like there's so many mental, physical, social, emotional drawbacks of being overscheduled. And it's like it's hard because parents are told that if your daughter isn't playing for the ECL team or if she isn't doing extra training, that she's going to get left behind. And I've said this before, that's absolutely not true. Like you can choose to do it a different way. Like you don't have to do all of those things to keep up. Like it's all about keeping up with the Joneses, and it's not the parents' fault, it's the industry's fault. It's all about the money. It's a $19 billion industry. And so parents need to be aware of this. That like your kids, if somebody tells you that you're going to get left behind because you don't sign up for their program, run the other direction, like run the other way, because they don't really care about your kid's well-being.
Mhm.
That's my soapbox, my rant for a minute.
I love it. Now, I'm curious, what do you think the solution to this all is? Because I had strength coach Mike Boyle on a couple weeks ago, and he said that perhaps maybe club coaches can kind of change what they're doing. And even though it is a year round model, they can start to incorporate other sports or activities into practice or warm up. So it's not the
True.
same thing over and over again.
That's
And
true.
more fun activities and more of like a break or walking or just doing something else other than just the
Yeah.
same sport. So what do you think the solution is? Or is it the parents who need to kind of back off? Like
I
there's
think,
so much going
yeah,
on.
there's yeah, I mean, you could look at every tier, the club, the coach, the parent. I think every like coaches, I feel like, and I could be wrong, this is just my opinion, they don't have a lot of control over like, oh, let's take 3 weeks off. Like, what is the club going to say because you're getting paid? Like, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing. But I love that you said make practices change the sport, like do something else, do a yoga session, like whatever, like change, doing little things like that can help. But I think that parents like kind of have to take a stand. And these aren't things that necessarily I've thought of, but that I've read in the book, Take Back the Game. But like some of the things that she mentioned was like for parents to like really like don't overschedule your kid, which we already talked about, but like let your kid miss some games and you as a parent miss some games. Like don't make it the most important thing in your life. When you make it the most important thing in your life, then obviously your priorities are going to be that thing. But there's so many things, and I'm like kind of drawing a blank on all the things I've read in the book. But I think for parents, it really starts with awareness and thinking like, does my kid really need this? Like, is this extra camp more important than her going out and going on vacation with her friends? No. You know what I mean? Like really looking at the holistic child and asking, does my daughter really need this? Or is this someone just trying to, like feed off of us? Because in a way, parents are kind of like prey in the sports industry, in the youth sports industry.
I
So it's
agree.
just kind of,
And
seeing through the lies, I think.
mhm. Yeah, they're definitely sold through emotion and fear. And that
Yeah,
really
definitely.
influences their behavior, especially their purchasing behavior and what clubs they're signing up for and all the dues that they're paying. But yeah, it's just such a lie. I mean, kids aren't going to be left behind. And hey, if your kid waits to play one sport by age 13 and they just kind of enjoy their childhood, I can guarantee that they're not going to fall behind. And
Yeah.
they're not only going to be a better athlete, but they're going to be a more confident person, and
Mhm.
they're just going to be more prepared for different situations in life. And like Shay said earlier, not putting their identity in just one thing. And they have a bunch of things going for them. And I've seen this. I've seen this happen with girls who get injured in college and they have nothing to fall back on. And they're like,
Yep.
okay, gotta start over and figure this out, which is fine. You can always start over, but it
Right.
can be a very big blow to some people.
I mean, I had a an Olympic volleyball player on my podcast. Her name is Rachel Adams. So she went to University of Texas, probably one of the best volleyball schools ever, and she played in the Olympics. Guess when she started picking up volleyball? She didn't touch a volleyball until she was a freshman in high school.
Mhm.
So like that just goes to show you. And she wasn't like she said she wasn't like a natural. Like yeah, she was tall and fairly athletic, but like it just goes to show you can look at so many different stories of pro athletes. Like go Google it. Look how many of those athletes like just started, not just started, but like picked up the sport a little bit later or had played multiple sports. Like go look at NFL QBs. How many of them just played football? Probably zero,
Mhm.
right? Like there's so many of the best athletes in the world. If that's your goal to be the best athlete in the world, play multiple sports, which that's obviously not my goal. But like playing multiple sports, I don't really see a negative to that other than if it creates too much over scheduling. But in general, I think multiple sports is a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if it's playing multiple sports in the same season, like a soccer, lacrosse,
Mm,
basketball combo, that can get a little bit funky. But,
absolutely.
gone are the days when we had a season for each sport, and I'm very
I
nostalgic.
know.
But if you can try and do that, even though you might get punished or people might make fun
Right.
of you. And I think that's another thing. People need to be okay to go against the crowd. I think a lot of people are
Yes.
following the crowd and they're just doing what everyone else is doing because it's considered normal. But what if it's not normal? And I always live by this. I always try to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
And it
There's a
hasn't
quote
failed,
by,
take the narrow
yeah.
road.
There's a quote by Mark Twain, and I am totally going to butcher it, but somewhere along the lines of if you start to go with a majority, like you better reevaluate what you're doing.
I think that's it.
And that happened to me in high school. Like I had to decide between high school basketball and club soccer, and I had to quit. I didn't have to, but I chose to quit basketball because it was like I had to like get scholarships and all this stuff. And I wish I would have been able to play basketball, but like you said, like don't be afraid to tell the coach like, hey coach, like this is my basketball season. I'm going to play basketball. I'll be back this time. Like if you're going to get punished, whatever, get punished, which that's a coach issue. Like that coaches should not punish you for doing that. But yeah, I think it's really important to go against the grain. Stop doing what everyone else is doing just because you were told by some guru that you have to do it. Like, do what's best for your child and do what's best for your family, period. End of story.
I think this is a strong foot to end on. So, guys, please check out Shay's Instagram and Twitter, as well as her programs in the caption below. I included all of those. And I want to just say again, I have been on a lot of her calls, and she talks about some very hard hitting, real stuff that's really going to make you mentally resilient. And I just love the topics and discussion. I mean, anywhere from dealing with performance anxiety to overcoming mistakes and just having really tough conversations with her female athlete clients. That it's just an absolutely amazing program. So Shay, thank you again for everything you're doing, and we're just going to keep fighting out here and just hope that we're being a part of the solution to all of this. So thank you again for coming on for this mini episode.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation.